The training room was silent. Only the sound of a growling K9 filled the air. Officers stood back, unsure if the dog could ever be trusted again. "He's too dangerous," someone said. "We have no choice but to put him down." But just as the handler reached for the syringe, a voice echoed from the corner. A blind U.S. Marine, cane in hand, stepped forward. The dog turned, ears twitching. The Marine whispered one single word, soft but commanding. Everyone froze. The K9 stopped growling, lowered his head, and whimpered. In that instant, they realized this wasn't a violent animal. This was a soldier who'd lost his way, waiting for someone who could still see him with his heart. The sterile hum of fluorescent lights filled the air as officers gathered in the quiet training facility. In the center of the room, behind steel bars, stood a German shepherd named Rex, once the pride of the K9 unit, now labeled a liability. His fur was scarred, his eyes cold and confused. He hadn't been the same since his handler was killed in the line of duty. "Stay back," one officer warned. Rex snarled, pacing anxiously. The chief watched from the observation window, his voice heavy. "He's too unpredictable. We've done everything we can." He hesitated before signing the paper that would seal the dog's fate, a single order that read, "Euthanasia approved." The vet prepared the syringe while the room fell silent. For years, this dog had chased criminals, sniffed out danger, and saved lives. Now, he was being condemned for not understanding grief. One young officer looked away, whispering, "He was a hero once." Rex growled, sensing tension. He wasn't angry, he was lost. Somewhere deep inside, he was still waiting for a command that would never come. As the vet approached, Rex's gaze shifted toward the doorway. The door creaked open. Boots echoed across the floor. A calm, steady voice broke the silence, one that didn't belong to anyone in uniform. The man who entered would change everything. The heavy door swung open, and the room turned silent. A man in a worn Marine jacket stepped inside, his cane tapping softly against the tile floor. Daniel Cole, a retired U.S. Marine, blind but far from broken, stood tall despite the faint scars that traced across his face. Every officer in the room paused. This wasn't a visitor they expected. "I heard you're putting down a soldier," Daniel said calmly, his voice steady. The chief shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, this dog isn't just aggressive, he's unpredictable. We've tried everything." Daniel tilted his head slightly. "You've tried commands. Have you tried understanding?" Murmurs spread across the room. No one had spoken to the chief like that before. Daniel reached into his pocket and produced an old identification tag. A K9 military emblem scratched and faded. "I train dogs like him," he said softly. "They don't turn bad overnight. They just lose their person." The chief hesitated, then sighed. "You have 5 minutes." "That's all." Daniel nodded once. 5 minutes is all I'll need." He removed his sunglasses and approached the pen slowly, his steps sure despite his blindness. Every officer watched in tense silence as the Marine stopped just inches from the cage. Rex growled low, but Daniel didn't flinch. The meeting of two wounded soldiers had just begun. The air inside the training pen was thick with tension. Officers stood behind reinforced glass, hands poised on tranquilizer triggers. Rex growled low, pacing in tight circles, his claws scraping against the concrete floor. Across from him, Daniel Cole stood motionless, blind eyes hidden behind calm determination. "I'm not here to fight you," Daniel said softly, his voice steady yet warm. The dog barked once, sharp and defensive. "Easy, soldier," he continued. "You've seen enough war." His tone wasn't commanding, it was understanding. Rex lunged suddenly, teeth flashing. Gasps filled the observation room. But Daniel didn't move. He simply lowered his head and whispered one single word, "Home." The word hung in the air like a forgotten prayer. Rex froze mid-step. His ears twitched, his breathing slowed. The snarl faded into a confused whimper. Slowly, almost hesitantly, the dog stepped forward. Daniel knelt, extending his hand. "That's right," he whispered. "You remember, don't you?" Rex lowered his head, pressing his muzzle into the Marine's palm. The room went silent. The officers behind the glass exchanged stunned looks. The dog that no one could reach had just surrendered, not to authority, but to compassion. Daniel smiled faintly. "Good boy," he said. "You're not lost. You just needed someone to speak your language again." For the first time in months, Rex rested peacefully in his kennel that night. The staff couldn't believe it. No growling, no pacing, no fear. But Daniel Cole knew why. The next morning, he returned to the facility, guided by his cane and instinct. "Let's try again, partner," he said softly, stepping into the training yard. This time, Rex didn't bark. He stood tall, alert, waiting. Daniel spoke calmly, using simple, firm commands. "Sit, stay, come." Rex obeyed each one, his movements sharp yet gentle, like muscle memory reignited. The officers watching through the window were speechless. Over the next few days, Daniel spent hours with him, feeding, brushing, and training through voice alone. Every command came with patience and respect. In return, Rex followed his every word, protecting him as though he knew Daniel couldn't see. Their bond grew stronger with each session, a connection forged not by sight, but by trust. Then came the revelation. During a quiet moment, the chief approached Daniel. "That word you used, home," it was Rex's final command from his fallen handler. It meant mission complete. "How did you know?" Daniel smiled faintly. "I didn't," he said. "I just spoke what I needed to hear once too." From that day forward, no one called Rex broken again. They called him reborn. A week later, the officers gathered again, this time under a different light, one of hope instead of fear. The training field buzzed with quiet anticipation as Rex stood proudly beside Daniel Cole, tail wagging softly, his stance calm and alert. The same dog once labeled too dangerous now waited for his command. "Ready, partner?" Daniel asked, gripping his cane loosely. He spoke with confidence, giving verbal cues one after another. "Sit, stay, come, heel." Rex obeyed each one perfectly, his movements sharp and precise. Every command echoed trust, not dominance. The crowd watching through the glass exchanged astonished looks. The chief wiped a hand over his face, speechless. "That's the same dog?" One officer whispered. "No," another replied quietly. "That's a soldier." When the test ended, Daniel knelt and hugged Rex tightly, tears glistening behind his dark glasses. "You did it," he whispered. "You're free now." The chief stepped forward, voice trembling. "We were wrong about him. About both of you." That day, the euthanasia order was torn apart. Instead, Rex was reinstated, not as a police K9, but as a therapy dog for wounded veterans. Rex rested his head on Daniel's knee. The Marine smiled faintly. "We saved each other, didn't we, buddy?" Months passed, and the bond between Rex and Daniel Cole became legendary across the state. The once feared K9 now wore a new badge on his harness: therapy and honorary service dog. Together, they visited hospitals, veteran centers, and schools, spreading courage wherever they went. Children who once trembled at the sight of a police dog now reached out to pet Rex, their laughter echoing through the halls to a rehabilitation center for wounded soldiers. Daniel sat beside a young Marine who had lost both legs in combat. The man's hands shook as he whispered, "I can't do this anymore." Without a word, Rex walked forward and rested his head on the soldier's lap. The man froze, tears spilling silently. "He knows," Daniel said softly. "He's been where you are." Weeks later, at a public ceremony, Rex was awarded the Medal of Honor for service beyond duty. Cameras flashed, but Daniel ignored them all, kneeling beside his partner. He removed his sunglasses, his voice breaking as he whispered, "Welcome home, soldier." Rex barked once, short, proud, and full of meaning. The crowd erupted in applause as the sun dipped low behind the flagpole. Daniel's final words closed the story. Some heroes never stop serving. They just wait for someone to believe in them again.